Okay, everyone, welcome back. This is episode 9. Is that
Number
right?
9.
Number nine. You guys remember that White Album, The Beatles?
Number
Really?
9.
Everybody's going, "Oh, Yoko, you're killing the band." Anyway, so yeah, we have something really exciting to talk about today, and this is the next part of the map. We really got into the quadrants, and we shall refer back to them continually because it's part of the operating system we're building here to help us on the journey of integral recovery, which is what this is all about. And these are lines, okay?
That's not cocaine, guys.
That's not. I don't get it. That's my hand.
Lines.
Is cocaine.
I just got triggered.
Lines! Oh my God, that's
I just got triggered.
So, got it. So anyway, lines are separate intelligences, okay? There's lots of different types of intelligences. This is really obvious. And I took American psychology or academics a long time to figure that out. And there used to be like one line, and that was your IQ line, your intelligence line or something. So if you, took an IQ test, you got 160 plus, you could get it, invited to MIT and blah, 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 or Harvard or Princeton or Texas State, one of these great schools. And I said that with a straight face. I love Texas State. Anyway, so in the 80s, it was Gardner, right? Who wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence.
No, that was Goldman. Daniel Goldman.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, Gardner did something else. And
Howard Gardner was
the theories of multiple intelligence. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, he was in there too. So anyway, the thing that had really been important was your IQ, all right? And we all know if we take an IQ test, what that's like. And well, Goldman, right? He said that there's this thing called emotional intelligence, another line. And we say lines because it's just a cool way to measure it because it's a vertical thing and you can be really, really low, as in you have really, really problems in that particular capacity, or it can be super advanced, or it could be somewhere in the middle or something. So that's why we say lines. It's just a really useful way of looking at it. And he said that that emotional intelligence was actually a much greater determining factor of a person's success in life and all the in professionally and relationally and et cetera, what most of us would call a successful life than just being super, super smart. And that was like, oh, wow, that was quite a interesting thing. And then, of course, I don't know who went with it, but Ken Wilber certainly talked about a lot that there's multiple intelligences, okay? There's the culinary intelligence, there's mathematical, there's musical, there's guitar intelligence, there's spiritual intelligence, all these things, and we all can intuitively know we're usually pretty good at some things and really not so good at other things. And, if you're not so good at brain surgery and you're a writer, it's no big deal, right? You're going to get along fine because you don't do brain surgery. But Ken, in his brilliance, said there's 4 essential lines that everybody has to account for. Because if you don't, you imagine like they're the 4 pillars of the temple or legs on a table. If you're missing one, or it's really the thing is really going to be unstable, wobbly enough, the whole thing will collapse. So pay attention. This is really important. These are the 4 lines that are essential for being a healthy, happy, functional, wise, evolved, enlightened human being, or a sober, recovered, inspired, healthy, person, as far as in this particular thing we're talking about, and beyond sobriety into super recovery, maybe. So we should say that. And the first line is the body. Okay, so your body's all messed up from your addiction, whether it's a Twinkie addiction or it's whiskey or it's Coke or it's meth or it's heroin, whatever. The body is just been neglected and abused. So we got to work on that. Okay, lifetime athletes, everybody, you got to work on it. And there's so much about that. You've got to, it's like, I don't know, there's arguments. We go 6 days a week, 5 days a week, 1 day a week, whatever. You got to do it quite a bit. And you really got to put effort into it. And you got to push yourself to your 10. Where you're really, you can't breathe and you're sweating and your neurochemicals are all charged up and your mitochondria are going, yeah, baby. All these different things are kicking in. So it's the body. And of course, it's nutrition and supplementation and not eating crap and eating good stuff and finding out what really works for you as far as that goes. The second line is the mind, okay? The intellect, again, the old early days of the computer, they said garbage in, garbage out. Well, that's true. If you just sit around and go on the internet and just kind of follow these weird things you can get into, these jags about the latest Kardashian disaster or whatever it is, you can spend years and years and you finish and you're like, ugh, I feel like I was hanging out with a psychic vampire and somebody just pumped, toxic sludge into my soul. You feel awful, you feel depressed, you're down. And I don't know, I'm not sure what the whole Kardashian thing is really about, but I do shop at grocery stores, so I see them there. And so you have to fill your mind with inspiring stuff. Hopefully this podcast is something that will inspire. Okay. And, the great mystics and great music and great literature and great conversations, real conversations, not what passes for conversations on, in the popular press now, where everybody just screams at each other trying to make their talking points. It's really obscene. But, and then, so we have the body, we have the mind, and then we have the emotions, our emotional health, which I include the shadow in there. And so that means you have to deal with your emotions moment to moment, and you have to deal with your interior emotional ego, your wounds, your traumas, your rotten stories about yourself, about reality, about how inadequate you are, of this or that or the other. False stories. Maybe you are inadequate in some ways. You need to work on it. But I'm talking about the things that keep us down, and our despair, our depression, our loneliness, our existential voidness. All of that stuff has to be worked on at that level, and that gets into the spiritual. But we'll talk about. And then you have the shadow issues. The shadow issues are the repressed parts of the psyche. Bob, you did a lot of work with Jungian psychology, which is really brilliant with that kind of stuff. I mean, Freudians were kind of into it too, but man, when it got into Jung's hand and the Jungians, they really did a good job. And so if you don't deal with these shadows, split off elements of yourselves, they will cause you to be stressed out, unhappy, and existential despair. And it's also not just the yucky things that happen or the bad things or things you don't want to look at, but it's also your essential callings and gifts that you don't want to look at because you don't think you're smart enough or you don't have hope that you have to bring forward. So there's the dark dragons, and there's the golden dragons or the light dragons that we have to bring forth and discover in this internal emotional work. And then the last one is the spiritual line. Okay. And yeah, it's really differentiated from religion. That's one thing. And it's, religion could be good or bad, whatever, or different. But what we're talking about here is an ongoing interior contemplative practice and exploration. And what you find there is really, really, really yours. Okay. And of course, you can go to the great traditions, or if you're really embodied in a tradition or a church or religion that's really feeding and working for you, that's fine. Everybody's invited to do this. But what really all the great masters in the religions and the spiritual sages of the past and present say, you've got to go inside. You've got to do the internal journey. And for most of us, doing traditional meditation and contemplative prayer, we just didn't have the context to support it. We didn't have the teachers. We didn't have the monasteries. We didn't have a lot of stuff. Nobody told us about it. But now, a lot of my work over the last decade has been to bringing this brain entrainment technology that allows us all to experience deep contemplative meditation and prayer, like from day one. I mean, we're down in these deep meditative states, deep brainwave states that before often took years of practice, and sometimes unsuccessful. You never got there, and now you can get there right away. And of course, you can use neuro and biofeedback too to help in that journey. But you just put these earbuds on and do that. And prior to this show, I did 2 hours today because I was just called to go hang out a little deeper and go a little longer, and it was beautiful. So those are the 4 lines, okay? And I'll shut up in a second here. But the first one is the body, the mind, the emotions, and the shadow, and the spiritual line. And you got to work on all of those lifetime till you're just like, okay, God, here I come right at the end. It's like, and that will keep you in the game, vital, useful, creative, wise, forgiving, relevant to the healing of the planet and everything we've been talking about. So there it is.
So those 4 lines are the foundation of what integral recovery practice is all about. And that's the important point too, is that it is a practice. We have discussed in earlier episodes the recent discoveries in neuroscience that have taught us about the plasticity of the brain, neuroplasticity, and the ability to continue to change throughout your life, as opposed to having a fixed brain once you reach your early 20s, as was thought for years and years and years. And so these these core integral recovery practices working on those 4 lines are ways to continue to improve those. And the important word here is capacities too. The lines can be thought of as capacities. And while we focus on these 4, there are anywhere between 16 to 30 or more, depending on which particular theorist you're looking at. But you look at these 4 essential things: the mind, the body, the emotions and shadow, and your spiritual line, and you have the 4 pillars, as John said, to go a long, long way. Now, it's important too that these are capacities. They reflect your ability to do things, and they all interrelate, as most things in integral model do, to other areas. They are interdependent with one another. And if you're talking about your body intelligence, your kinesthetic intelligence, for example, you spend time in the gym lifting weights, or you spend time practicing sports, and that enhances your kinesthetic intelligence so that you can more easily master other skills within that domain.
Absolutely.
Now, the same thing applies to one of the most important here is the cognitive line too. You increase your ability to understand different things by engaging with difficult material, as opposed to, like John said, reading the tabloids and the Kardashians. But you do this, and it improves your ability to understand and engage with all sorts of concepts. It's hard to perceive the emotions of another person if you don't work on the intellectual, the mental, cognitive line enough to understand what's going on there. The cognitive line really opens the door for the rest of this stuff to make sense. Spiritual intelligence and the ability to sense and connect with the divinity, the miracles that are all around and within us, that we're all just swimming in all of the time, are all strengthened by working all 4 of these lines together because of the interplay there, along with all of the others that I'm sure we will address here at some point.
Yeah, we'll look into the practices in great detail as we move along into this thing.
John, as I was listening to you, I was thinking of a story when I was in graduate school 35, 40 years ago. I had some intuition about this, and it was that obviously the mind was going to get way cultivated in a 6-year doctoral program. That was going to be well taken care of. And I used to do this thing. I've shared elements of this before. I would study for 45 minutes, and I would do this 8 hours a day. I would just study 8 hours a day. I'd study for 45 minutes, but on 15 minutes, I would break it up. And I'm a musician, so one of the easiest things would be for me to sit down at the piano. And
Piano.
I played piano, and I got pretty developed as a pianist in graduate school, but afterwards I went back to my first love, which was drumming. But I would play.
Bob's a heck of a drummer, by the way. One of my great pleasures in life is playing music with Bob.
Yeah, same for me with you, John. So I play music. The other thing I do is I can still remember I'd tuck my toes underneath a closet door and do sit-ups, or I do push-ups, and I just work out in the living room in between studies. But the most challenging thing for me to do, and I remember setting this in motion, is I thought, if I keep studying all this time, one of the things that's going to happen is I'm going to lose any capacity to fix shit around the house. And so I would take on some practical chore or task, like, I need to fix the hinge on the door, or I need to, check out, some loose washers or something. And I would do that. I'd do that on my breaks. And it just kind of kept me grounded. In fact, the coolest thing for me in graduate school, my first year, was I studied. I was always doing studying. And I had a job as I swept the grounds of the student apartments I lived in. And I'd go out and I would study for a few hours, and I'd go out and I'd spend an hour just with this big broom sweeping the dust. And I think the best ideas came doing that. Best ideas came doing that. Now, how that's translated into my modern practice is in my calendar on my iPad and so on. I've got this broken down, and I just track how I'm doing each week around these practices. And it's very curious. It's followed me over the years. There's never a problem with my developing the mentals thing. It's just every day I'm reading so much stuff all the time. So that one takes care of it. So I don't even have to track that one. It tracks itself. Because I'm pretty dedicated to interior practice, there's a lot of work that I do on the shadow stuff. And that one's virtually daily. and so that one tends to take care of itself. And spirituality, I'll tell you the one that gets neglected for me, and this would be different for different people, but since I've spent most of my adult career in academics, it's the body. It's the body, always has been the body for me. And so this afternoon after our podcast, I go for a long hike on the beach with my partner and get myself revved up, because it's a strenuous hike and we take it at a fast pace, is that it's imperative that I not neglect any of these lines that we're talking about. And it's easy for me to do that. And I remember one time years ago sitting very early in my academic career, sitting at a big meeting table at the university where I was working. And for some reason, my eyes fell to the edge of the table and they followed around the edge of this long table. And I saw one pot belly after another. I was very young at this point. I just started. And I thought, that's my fate if I don't do what we're talking about. I thought, so you end up with these disembodied kind of talking heads that are not connected, and that's got to affect the way that they think, the way that they imagine.
That's horrible. Yeah.
Anyway, it began to be my conscience. It still is my, Jung would call it your inferior function. My inferior function is it's so easy for me to neglect the body. For some other people, it's the mind. For other people, it's, it depends on whatever it is. But I think that the integral practice, and we'll talk more about this, but around these developmental lines, it means I'm constantly working on developing as many of these as I can. There are some that are just off the charts in terms of they're just never going to be greatly developed. You mentioned culinary intelligence. I don't even want to go there.
I got about 3 things I can cook pretty well. The rest is like a mystery.
So limited, but the others are really imperative. I want to mention one last thing because it was inspired by what you said, Doug. And John, you and I have talked about this before. The crazy thing in terms of how these inform each other is that I play drums a lot. I'm active as a jazz drummer. And when I play drums by night and the next day come to teach, for example, run a psychoeducational group, or the work that I do around administration, the drumming absolutely informs the work that I do in the mind. I think of the drumming actually as soul. I actually add a 5th line here around soul, around creativity. That's just the way I help organize it for myself. That's my 5th practice. And when I teach well, because teaching is such a creative act, and then I go to drum that night, the drumming reflects that. And so it's just a way to suggest that however you work out, John, is the way you play guitar, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way to separate that stuff out. So it's just to say these lines are separate, and it's very useful, and they're completely informing of one another. And so all the more reason to keep as many of these plates spinning as we can in a very intentional way.
Yeah, and it's not as complicated as it sounds. You know, there's 4 lines, and you don't need to go in and pay some expert, thousands of dollars to show you where you're at with your lines. I mean, if you're out of shape, you probably can figure that out pretty good. If you neglected your intellectual line, you haven't read a book in 10 years, and I watch the Kardashian show, every day, all night, whatever. I'm bagging on the Kardashian, but anyway. And then, and I mean, you may not know. And if you don't know, your emotional line is probably really hurting, and your spiritual line, you'll know that, and how do you get spiritual? Well, I went to a good church. I had good teaching when I was a kid. No, spirituality is like anything else. It is a practice. We were talking about, we were looking at a quote from a Zen master who said, religion is a practice, just as this, spirituality is something you do. You don't just we're all spiritual in the sense that we're all essence. We're all that great thing, but it's the awareness of that and the cultivation of the depth, where it's not just, we're all one, think, and you go into some kind of state of psychosis. It's actually what comes out of there is wisdom, compassion, inspiration, creativity, the good stuff from the spiritual practice, but it has to be done. Yeah. And most of our churches and our temples and whatnot, it's all a very exterior practice. You go to mass, you get the host, you sing a few songs, you pray together, and you go back home, and that's it. And there's all kinds of versions of that, and that's all well and good. That's it's good to have some kind of communal worship service, but if you don't do the interior work, and there's a Zen koan that says, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. It's like, oh my God, you're going to kill the Buddha. He was such a great guy. Why would you do that? Well, it's not actually saying that. It's saying if you're expecting the spiritual, really true breakthroughs to happen anywhere but inside of you, you're looking in the wrong place. You're trying to project it on the guru or this guy or that guy. Not that we can't have great spiritual teachers who can inspire, but the real ones are always pointing you inside into the inner guru and the wisdom. And, you know, when we're talking about the emotional line and the spiritual line, I think teeters between that is the opening of the heart. Okay. And I was interviewing Dr. Deborah Rossman for the Spiritual Technology Summit that we're doing, and she's the heart math, you know, person and the main person right now. And she talked about the intelligence of the heart and the wisdom voice, and you learn to discriminate between, you know, your brilliant intellectual mind or your not brilliant intellectual mind, but the kind of intuitive knowing and the understanding and the wisdom that comes from the heart is something that also, again, has to be cultivated. And once you get that down as the foundation for being an actualizing, realizing, showing up human being, then you can take those disciplines and the beauty of that to your drumming or to any other capacity that you feel vocationally called to be. Like you want to be a brain surgeon or a scientist or a writer or a librarian, you name it, you know, you're going to get so much better than that. I have my two practices outside of my working, well, it's part of my working out, and outside is my electric guitar, my guitar playing, my music. That's why I'm, you know, I have this all surrounded. All my guitars are there. At any moment I have I'm driving all the dogs in the neighborhood crazy. I'm practicing, working on it, you know, and also tennis has become a real spiritual experience for me, which we're going to do as soon as we wrap this show up. So you have that foundation, and there's so much to be said about all those individual, you know, what is the body? I mean, my God, there's a huge industry, and there's millions of books published, not millions, but lots of books published every year about physical health and diet, etc. The intellectual life and the emotional life, psychology, and then the contemplative spiritual life. And one of the things that have come out of kind of psychology and transpersonal psychology, which I studied in grad school, is that, you know, the West was pretty good at differentiating and just exploring the individual ego and, you know, repression and the id and shadow and all the stuff that emerged, and then humanistic and all that was really good. But at a certain point, humanistic just it hit the glass ceiling, right? And it couldn't get any higher. And that's when said, oh, to be a really deep human being, a truly healthy human being, you got to include spirituality. It's always been there. We've never found a culture, civilization, a lost tribe, anything that didn't have some kind of connection to spirituality and the beyond human intelligence of the world. So that is an essential part of being a human being, and we really have to cultivate it, because if you don't, there's a certain level in our ego development. I mean, we can get along with it for years, some of us. But at a certain point, there's just shallowness unless you go into the depth to discover that ground of being in your own self and you know, conversely in all things. And that's where the journey takes us. So,
John, you mentioned that different people tend to have strengths in different areas. And Bob, you were talking about this too, to some extent, naturally focusing a lot on your study. And it occurs to me as we're talking about all this, that a lot of this is related to your typology. There are, in the Enneagram, there are head types, there are body types, and there are heart types. And these particular lines that we are more inclined to focus on and develop naturally, that require less effort for us to make part of our daily practice, are related to that typology. And that's something that we can continue to explore in the future. We're hopefully we'll have a good guest on in a couple of weeks here who can delve more into that, especially as it relates to recovery. I also wanted to add here that it's important to focus on these four and the things that you want to do, because there are so many things out there in the world, so many different intelligences, so many different lines that we can cultivate, that there's just no possible way to do it all within one lifetime. And so, you know, we start with these four essential lines and these four essential practices, and then pick the other ones. You mentioned, both of you, music, and I am a musician as well, so that's part of my practice. But choosing what's important to you, what are your particular strengths, what are your interests, where does your contribution lie, and where is your attention best spent to determine what you're going to do with your limited time in a day and the limited span of your life.
Yeah, you know, and I'm convinced that I hate that expression, I'm convinced. Well, isn't that nice? You know, see if you can convince me now. But my intuition or my experience, you know, my own personal and working with people for years, is that when you really pay attention to the emotional work, interior work, and the spiritual work, that these things, that the other skills, the other capacities that you need to develop become kind of an intuitive knowing. It's not just intellectual. Well, I took a test and they say I'd be a really good fireman. So I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm saying in these deeper kind of vocational callings that we aspire to really begins to come out of our soul. And it really becomes something that, oh yeah, this I can't not do this. It'll kill me not to develop this. And I think there's a wisdom inside of us that will direct us to the teachers that we need to do and what we need to accomplish what we need to accomplish while we're here.
And then having the courage to reach out and pursue those things too comes from doing the practices, doing the heart work,
Absolutely.
the meditation, the shadow work required to get there.
I went to a conference 25 years ago or so. It was a conference for psychotherapists. There were about 200 psychotherapists in the room. The speaker was the Jungian analyst James Hillman. And
awesome.
There's somebody sitting next to me that said, Dr. Hillman, what do you think is the single most important thing in becoming an effective psychotherapist? And his answer was instantaneous. He said, it's to cultivate your art form.
Sweet.
And he paused for a second. And he says, and by art form, I mean that in the broadest, most individual sense imaginable. So one of you your art form might be dance or sculpture. Another, it might be gardening. Another, it might be washing dishes mindfully. But it's in the spirit of what both of you are saying. He said, you must cultivate depth first if you're going to be an effective psychotherapist. And I think you can apply that to being a fully alive, a true human being, is that you could do worse than to cultivate your art form. And that none of us are excluded. He had a very Catholic approach to it, didn't he? Very universalistic approach, is that everything is included. Anything that I do with all my heart that helps cultivate depth inside me is one of my art form expressions. So people will say, God, I wish I could play music like you, Doug. And that's beautiful. It's just like you just say to them, no, play music like you. And maybe it's not even music.
Or you say, put in the years and maybe you will.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Discipline, practice, and mastery are big around here, by the way.
Oh my God. Yeah. Don't get me started.
Yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah. I drummed for 5 years, you guys, from ages 9 to 14. And all I did was work on foundational stuff for 5 years. It was bone grinding work, but it was in service of it. I didn't have any, there was some intuition. I was in love with drums. I was insatiably drawn to drums, but the first 5 years were exceedingly unromantic. But it's like the foundation of that was essential. And at age 14, when I got my first drum set, it just completely blew open the lid because all of that foundation worked. And at this point, I'm 61 now, so I've been drumming for over 50 years. The learning never stops. The practice never stops. It's like, I think the rich get richer because once you've developed some foundation, whatever your art form is, if it's gardening, it's to learn the essentials of gardening. For me, it was drumming, the rudiments of drumming. But once you learn that, then it feeds the creative process. And then the creative process creates the hunger to want to practice and learn more. And so the discipline involved is no longer kind of from the outside in. It really is kind of that root sense of discipline where I'm being discipled by the drums. I'm a disciple of drums.
Yeah.
And I do that out of love at this point.
And it's infinite. And that can be really daunting. It's like, this is infinite. I heard Keith Richards one time, he says, the guitar neck is infinite. It just like keeps revealing itself. And that can either just blow your mind and discourage you, or you can say, hey, I am falling into the infinite. And as we know from our spiritual practice and practice musician, the infinite is a good place to be.
It is, John.
Beautiful.
When I sit down at the drum set and I'll sign up, I'll get studio time just for me and the drum set. I sit down and play. It comes to me not infrequently. If I play a certain phrase or a certain figure, I'll realize not only have I not played what I just played, no one has ever played what I just played. It's just unbelievable to me. We talk about infinite. It's like to be able to be a vessel of that kind of creativity. I'll cultivate my art form. Thank you very much, Dr. Hillman.
Man,
yeah, absolutely. And
a miracle when you get out of the way and allow that to happen. Get the ego out of the way, which of course requires some work in the spiritual line of development too, to allow
And
yourself to do that.
it also takes the discipline of those 4 years of learning flammadiddles or whatever the hell you were working on, where it's not so groovy. You know, you can't just pick up a guitar and I'm Jimi Hendrix. You know, maybe in air guitar games or something. You know, you get to have the glory of the crowd and then without ever achieving anything. You know, so you got to put that, and somehow you had the fire in the belly to stick with it. You're probably getting a lot of support at home. It's like, you know, most families who live in a small house don't support Junior becoming a drummer. You know, so.
But I had good teachers, John. And
Yeah.
another piece of this, we talked in the last presentation about co-regulation. We all need good teachers. Nowadays, John, I know that you study the master guitarists online. You can watch YouTube videos, and that's unbelievable. In our youth, respectively, we couldn't do that. You had to physically have a good teacher there. And so we stand on the shoulders of those that came before us, for sure.
Oh, so, yeah, and their shoulders are so visible and so accessible now.
Mm-hmm.
It's truly tremendous. And sometimes I'll go, you know, I'm an electric blues guitarist, and sometimes I just need to go do Freddie King. You know, so I'll go to Apple Music or YouTube and watch a Freddie or just play along with a song, and, you know, these sharp, crisp, you know, just brilliant things that he would do. Or I need to do Peter Green or this or that. It's just a movable, ongoing, profound, infinite feast. And I was going to say that the 3 things to go along with that we're cultivating in these lines, and Ken talks about this a lot, but it's the good. Okay, and that's what we learn in our emotional, spiritual, even intellectual work. What really matters? You know, what does it mean to be an ethical person? What it means to have a moral life? Is it just to accumulate a bunch of stuff? Does it mean to make it with all the women that I can? Does it mean this, that, the other? What does that mean? Okay, so you have the good, you have the true. Okay, and which is really important, which is where, you know, objective science comes in, you know, in medicine, and this about the brain and nature, reality, and the, you know, strong force, weak force, gravity, all of these things that we know, relativity, just the whole objective scientific world. It's tremendous. It's why if my friends call me and they're in trouble in Europe, I can get on a plane and, you know, blah, 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 be there in 12 hours. You know, I mean, somebody did this stuff. You know, the fact that we're here and you're in North Carolina, is it? Or South Carolina?
North, yeah.
Carolina somewhere. Okay. And you're in someplace over there. No,
I'm in South California.
Southern Cal, right. You know, we're here in deep, dark Utah. And so we can be here communicating. I mean, somebody did that work.
Yeah.
The true science, it works. It's replicable, right? And then there's the beautiful, which is where art comes in, and we also get in touch with our spirit. The beauty of you know, the beauty of the all comes in. The awe when I go out and look out my window here. I take my dog out every morning to go run around in the wilderness. It's beauty. So we need all of that to be balanced. You know, we need the good, we need the ethical, we need the true. You know, science and what is so, and we also need what is beautiful in our lives, and that informs the soul, and that helps us to be, you know, integrated, integral, healthy human beings. And when we neglect any of those, we just get out of balance, and the patterns begin to get out. It doesn't mean we all have to be scientists and drummers and you know, lawyers, but you know, we need to have that accounted for. We need to have that balanced out. And in Western culture, because of the dominance of the church in the Middle Ages and ongoing, we had to really separate those things out, because you know, you couldn't really do science if you're going to get burned at the stake for discovering a planet. You know, it kind of got in the way of, you know, astronomy, if you will. So things separated out, right? And so artists became very artsy, and scientists became very, you know, very objective, and neglecting interiors and the soul and all this stuff. And the mystics, you know, religion became its own thing. But now we're seeing the need, because all of those things are impoverished if you don't bring them together. You bring them together, and it's like rock and roll. You know, you really got something here to take home, you know, and something to grow with. So, yeah.
Yeah, the good, the true, and the beautiful fit really nicely into the 4 quadrants too. The good is our relationships with one another down there in the lower left.
True.
The true in the upper right is science and objective reality. And the beautiful is the upper left and what I perceive in the world around me, the experience that I'm having of majesty and beauty and all of that.
Well said. Well said.
Amen. And the other thing about these 4 lines and the practices around them is you have to learn to be a practitioner, okay? And you have to learn to suck. I mean, you have to suck, but you have to be willing to suck It was depending what your job is. Anyway, let's not go there. But you have to be willing to be a beginner and not be good at it. I was talking to a young man in the gym the other day, and he was just starting out to play the guitar. You know, it's like, but he had the hunger. I could see that, and I was just encouraging him to be willing not to sound good. The first time you try to play that D chord, you know, it's like his fingers don't fit right, or they're bumping into each other, and you don't have enough strings to push the strings down. It sounds terrible. It doesn't sound like a chord. It sounds like a boom or something. So you have to be willing to day by day and learn deep practice and learn what it is to keep showing up, and the grittiness of persistence and the willingness to sacrifice and work hard now for future development. You know, if I'm going to play like Bob Weathers, I'm going to have to put in the kind of stuff that Bob Weathers put in. You know, if I'm going to be a basketball player like the people that we admire now, you're going to have little dudes are playing fantastic basketball. So you don't have to be a big, you know, you don't have to be LeBron James. You know, you can do it if you put in the time. So it's time. And the good news is, as you deepen into the practice becomes ever more rewarding. And you might hit some plateaus where you're not thinking you're making progress, but practice is kind of like that until you hit the next, you know, the big, you know, spike where you jump to that next level. So it's a really inspiring story, and it takes grittiness, inspiration, and maybe coaches to show you how to practice, how to get going. But once you get going and once you've made it yours, you're moving into mastery, and things will never be the same. You know, you're going to move from beyond mere sobriety to super recovery, which is self-actualization and self-realization. You know, what you're supposed to do and who you ultimately are. We are. There's only one of us here. So that's where it all rolls to. That's the teleological direction this all goes in.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Are we going to wind down, gentlemen, for
Yeah, I
today?
think that's beautiful.
Okay.
Wow, what a great place. And hope, anyway, so keep those cards and letters coming.
Yeah, right on, John. Doug,
And
thank you, guys.
And also I don't know if we've set this up yet, but there's going to be a free meditation track, Deep Delta, we decided to start with, which is a beautiful 40-minute track that takes you down into the deep brainwave, which is a very slow, powerful brainwave, a deep meditative state. It's 40 minutes long, and, you know, you can get rolling on that, and you need, you know, good earbuds, good headphones. That's, you know, you put it on your iPod or your smartphone or on your computer, whatever device you want to use. And you want to just, if you haven't meditated before, try doing it for 10 minutes. And if you're an experienced meditator, you can do the 40 thing. And if you really want to go, you can do 50, you know, you can loop it or whatever and do it again. But you'll find it's a great tool. And I think it's really important that that you start participating in the practices, because that's you know, that's how we negotiate this incredible map that we're unfolding. You know, the territory is by doing the work, and these tools are tools that we never had available before, not like this. And we can make this process of cleaning up, waking up, showing up, and growing up to be something very possible for all of us, and very democratic in the sense that, you know, it's one time Ken, we were talking, and he said, you know, well, somebody asked him if this was you know, this is very elitist. Thank you. Yeah. And he said, yeah, it's really freaking elitist, but it's an elitism into which we are all invited. Okay. So we're now all just all the same, you know, we're all invited to become the elite version of ourselves and give that gift back to the world and to life and to each other and to yourself. You know, when you become that, that's your greatest gift that you can give the world, all of us, and yourself. That's where the greatest joy comes from. True, authentic, deep joy. So I think that's a great place to stop. So, hey, you guys, thank you so much. And
John.
Next time. Yeah.
All right,
Everybody, that's that Deep Delta track that John mentioned is available on integralrecoveryinstitute.com. The button's right there. It says free. Can't miss it. So go visit us there, and we can't wait to connect with you. Also, just wanted to mention that we've got our Integral Recovery Masterclass coming up soon. So while you're at the website getting your free Deep Delta track, take a look there, and we'll give you a good condensed version of the entire Integral Recovery map presented. We'd love for you all to be there. It's free. It's going to be a great experience, and go sign up. We can't wait to see you.
That's
brilliant.